Good afternoon. Thanks for being here late on the afternoon on Monday. Thanks for the organizers for inviting me and having me here on the stage. It's a pleasure to be here. First time Guatemala, first time on this stage here. So, as you heard, I'm a marketer. Have been marketer most of my career, but that's not how it started. I started actually as an engineer. And so I'll be talking my life story, basically. The story of as you hear, marketers want to tell stories, so this is my story, how I became a marketer, an engineer, and why I think we should have lunch together. So let me walk you through my story. Okay, so before I did marketing, I have actually a master's degree in computer science. I wrote a thesis on expert system design in '89, way before we all talked about AI. And then I got a doctorate in industrial engineering. And these are some of the things that I wrote. So, fairly technical stuff, right? And I thought it was all really good stuff if I just write about it, and I designed software systems. So I was a chief architect for an ERP company back in the Netherlands. I'm Dutch, I live now in the US, but I was a chief architect, and I wrote these kind of articles. And I'm sure most of you have experienced how is it to work with engineers or product designers. They have a very specific view on the world, and often it's like, well, if we just make it, they will come, right? And I think this is a kind of representation how engineers, maybe even including myself, thought about marketing initially. Just let you digest this a little bit. For who does this sound familiar? Yeah? Are you marketers? You're not marketers, and then even then it sounds familiar, right? So, do you really need them? And well, long story short, I can talk about another time what happened to in my case and why I start thinking differently. But in the end, it is engineers forget often that marketing and sales is a people business. And it's more than just trying to position a product. And before people buy solutions, there's a whole process that happens. And so on the next slide, I have a process that happened when I was at Microsoft. And I was responsible for the launch of the Dynamics marketing product in 2014. And we looked at different personas and given examples like how people buy those Dynamics marketing solutions. And that looked like something like this, which is actually a slide from one of the research companies. I believe it was Forrester Research. And what you see here, it takes for a certain persona 17 steps before they decide on which vendor what product they're going to buy. And on the left, you can see here, let's see if the laser works. You probably can't see the laser anyway. So you see it's like there's different ways, different channels, how people interact. They go to the website, they go to conferences like this to hear about what are solutions, what are opportunities, what are options. Then they may talk to a vendor or multiple vendors. We just had someone here from Microsoft on stage, so you may want to talk to a person like that, is a PDM. He works with other partners here in the country, and so you have interactions with them. Then you may download a white paper, and so there's different steps. Oh, go a little too fast. So in the end, what you see here is all the different assets that a marketing team typically creates as part of that process. And none of that typically involves engineering. So the product is there. In this case, was Microsoft Dynamics Marketing. And so as part of the go-to-market, you go through all the cycles of a go-to-market program and actually launch the product once the product is there from an engineering viewpoint. So that's really why marketing and engineering is a complementary thing, right? And in the end, why do you want that from a business perspective? And so the next slide is, I was also VP of marketing at 3 smaller tech companies where we did implementation of the various services. And I only had like 3 marketing people in my team. So not big tech people. So a lot of like companies like yourselves where maybe there's only 3 marketers, right? How do you go to market? And so this is the kind of outcome that you'd like to see. So I started, and this is the first year and a half that I worked at this company, just the web traffic that I achieved by implementing the program that I'm going to talk about a little bit. So you see in the beginning, in May of that year, we had 2,000 visitors on a monthly basis to our website, and then we scaled that to about 8,000. Continuous growth, and that continued to grow. I did that 3 times. This was in 2008, this number from 2008. I did it again after I left Microsoft in 2017, 18, and then again, just the last couple of years before I actually retired last year and start looking for other things. So I did that 3 times. And so let me talk like how I did that. And it's really, that's where the title comes from. It often starts with lunch. Being a technical person myself, what I often did is I just had conversations with engineers about what they have been doing. And so if you ask an engineer, typically it's like, okay, why this product? They go into very much detail about what the product is, what the product does. But if you have just a casual conversation, then they start talking about what did they do last week? And what was the problem that they solved for a customer just last week? And that nugget can be really something that drives the interest of a customer. Often it is about problems that customers have, and they're very enthusiastic about like talking about, oh my goodness, I was at this customer last week, and the problem they had was this and this and this and this. They don't even get to the answer necessarily what the solution to that is, but like what is the problem? And then the assumption is that he solved it, right? Or they solved it. That was also a keynote of, I don't know if she's here, Dot Lung. There is Dot. That's one note that I took, Dot. It's I mentioned to your slide. Like marketing is about marketing. Often it's a marketing of what are the problems in the market, not necessarily what are the solutions in the market. Because if you present about what the problem is in the market, they assume that you know the solution, right? Because why would you talk about the problem if you don't know the solution, right? So here's one example. One of the conversations I had, different way. This is not a very good picture because this is a real picture. Not made up or anything. This is back from, again, 2008 when I did that on the first time. I had a conversation. We were in the business of compliance in safety, environment, and healthcare for car dealerships. And one story one day, the engineer tells me is like, oh my goodness, safety of grinders in the workshop of car dealerships. And this is a grinder. So, you know, it's like fast spinning thing to actually take sharp pieces of metal in a car as part of repair. And so he was telling us like, he's really good and became a really, like, I'll try to make it simple, but it became a really interesting and pretty gory story actually, because a grinder he points at it, and there's a picture of our engineer. He points at there's a safety feature there on top, and there's a similar safety feature at the bottom. And he said, like, what the dealers often do, or in workshops, they take those safety features off because it's just challenging to work with it and it slows you down. And so why not take it off? Well, he says, like, well, one thing that can happen is that if you take it off and then by accident you touch it while it's working with your thumb, it actually pulls off your thumb, and then the thumb spins around and shoots out at the other side in your stomach. And just the way he described that, I thought, like, that's actually really kind of hilarious. And so I created a whole program around that, especially because I saw then a little bit later that actually a dealership got a fine. I blacked it out here, but they got a $75 fine from OSHA because they didn't do that. And so we created a whole webinar and then a blog and other content around that feature. And guess what? You get a lot of attention, and it keeps coming back because people start looking up like OSHA problems or violations or challenges in dealerships. So you get a search engine optimization up to like nothing else that you've seen before. So that keeps giving back, and that's why that graph that you saw keeps coming up. So now you really have to institutionalize, like this is one story, right? And so I started then using basically engineering methodology in doing marketing. So I started using just terminologies like, okay, from lunch, we started like, okay, what are our common business goals? What are business strategies? And then we start having weekly sprints. I don't know if you're familiar with the terminology. Typically in software engineering, they use the terminology of sprint, where every week or every period of time, they define, okay, this is what we're going to do in the future. And then you're going to do it in that week. And then at the end of the week, see what has been achieved, what not, and then create another sprint of what's happening. And then twice a week, we have a Scrum. And Scrum is where everybody gets together and see what are the solutions that we need to solve here. So in my case, I had a marketing team of 3 people. One was more dealing with technology, the website and everything like that. One marketing manager, like a campaign manager, what you typically say as a marketing person. And then one person was like a journalistic background and actually created the stories. And so that person would then interview and would actually create the slides for a webinar, and the engineer would just show up with no preparation. He could tell the story because he tells a story. He loved to tell that story. And so we did that on a weekly basis and keep on doing that for all different topics. So I'll just skip on like another topic that we did here. But basically what we do is we have that one story that you see, and you have make an integrated marketing campaign around it. The one story about OSHA grinder, and we create a webinar, email, a website, a social program around that. All of that in a weekly cycle. One weekly cycle. And not just that, we managed to go with a team of 3 people, 2 webinars a week. 2 webinars a week on a weekly cycle, creating all of this content in a weekly cycle with just 3 people. And that's because the content, we never had to make up content. There was so much content because the engineers that was there. At that time, and the next slide is really about, at that time we did everything really on a board, like often engineers did back in 2008. Now there's various tools. In the last couple of companies, I use actually tools where you do it digitally with remote teams, all of that kind of stuff. But here we just use Post-its. And so this is again using engineering terminology, and you involve those engineers in the process. And this board was sitting on the corridor where both sales and engineering would walk by, and even the sales would come by and say, hey, Patrick, what are you doing here? Can we do that faster? Because I have a sales opportunity next week, and can we do that? And so we use this on a weekly basis. What are we going to do? What has started? Where we are. So this is probably done like on probably like a Tuesday afternoon, looking at like where we are in the progress. And then every week we repeat that. Rinse and repeat. If something doesn't work, we move it back. And then also, because we have common goals, sometimes the content person would say, hey, I'm behind with something, can someone help? And then the web guy would say, oh, I can help with that and that. And so it becomes a collaborative effort to get everything done every week. So it becomes really a very just data-driven, results-driven marketing engine. And then just a couple of examples. And this was from 2008. So keep in mind, 15 years ago, I just pulled this information, these graphics, just from the current website, what currently is still available. So even 15 years later, this probably still drives traffic, still valid, still relevant, because I just had to do a couple of Google search terms And all of this popped up. So it's still valid 15 years later from a content viewpoint. So that was in the one company that I did that. That was before I joined Microsoft. There I did the similar but much bigger scale, obviously. Microsoft Dynamics Marketing was a product that I launched, and then working in partnership with Adobe, things like that. And then I went again to more a tech company that did implementation of those Microsoft tools, and there we did the same thing. So there, one of my favorite engineers to work with, he was actually a data-driven scientist. So the first conversation I had with him was about how to upgrade a data warehouse to the cloud. Now, I have enough language in that space because of my tech background that I could listen to him and kind of understood what he was talking about. And so it's like, and that's where I start triggering questions to say, so is there only one way? No, he's like, no, there's about 5 ways. I'm like, that's too many. Let's do a webinar on 3 ways that you can do that. And he's like, oh, that's easy. And so now, again, working with my content team, I create the slides for him, and he just shows up. And then a few weeks later, we do a webinar about 3 scenarios when to upgrade data to the cloud. And again, do that over and over again. So it becomes an engine, really, and that's where, again, my mind is as a data-driven marketer, that's where you come in. You build a team around it. In essence, you need a few different roles. So you need a very strong tech marketing role, not only website and not just for SEO, but email marketing in B2B is still very, very strong and really drives a lot of the leads. You work then also with partners. So you do also partner programs. So I'm not simplifying things. So you do actually, your goal is to disseminate all that information. And I started thinking more as a almost like a publisher house of information. And I invited also partners and competitors even to come here. So the first company I mentioned, we did environment and safety compliance, 2 webinars a week. After a year and a half, 2 years or so, the Environmental Protection Agency of Florida came to me and say, hey, can we do a webinar on your platform? Can you organize that? And I'm like, yes, of course. That's awesome. Now I have the credibility. EPA is doing a webinar in my platform. And I even had some competitors even doing presentations as part of my series. Salespeople may not like it directly immediately, but if I explain how I position that competitor, traffic comes to us, new leads come to me first, and it's up to me where I distribute the leads. And so it's really become sales, marketing, operation, working with engineering together. And in the end, another thing of that whole process, how you implement it, and again, there's a lot more behind it, but the key thing is also create shared KPIs. So my marketing people, they had the same KPIs as the salespeople. And then they started really collaborating. And if they're asking, it's like, hey, Patrick, we're not meeting our quarterly goals. I'm like, that we cannot do anything about it. It's like, well, then do something about next quarterly goals. And that really starts working. So on a weekly basis, I was part of the sales planning and forecasting, and my team was part of that too. And so this is actually an example of what marketing contribution to pipeline. From when I started there in October with the company, so in January I started measuring the first marketing contribution to pipeline, and you see how in a year and a half, 2 years, how it just went exponentially up. Now, imagine what does that do to credibility of the marketing team with sales and with engineering. If you show this, 1/3 of my time I spent also internal marketing, and then I showed this to the engineer and to the executive team, of which I was part of, then you got the credibility, and then engineers will actually even sometimes build new features that customers want or that you think would be good to be part of a marketing go-to-market strategy. So just to conclude, marketing and engineering, they often don't fully understand that it's totally a people's business. And it's really that people's business. If you start looking at that way of working together and see each other's perspectives of how to go to market together, then you can really get a lot of synergy. And in my case, one of the things was just start having lunch together, almost like every day, or share the office and do things together, get to know each other at a personal level. Makes a huge difference. So thank you very much.
Paraíso, donde sus valles de alelís y sus eternos cafetos de esmeralda te envuelven en sus mágicos amaneceres y atardeceres, con su hermosa gente y sus amplias sonrisas que te hacen sentir como en casa, con su rico café y su mágica eterna primavera, sus colores vibrantes y calles llenas de historia. Esta tierra ha nacido para florecer en el centro de las Américas. Así es nuestra hermosa Guatemala, tierra única que florece hoy y siempre, con sus sabores, ritmos, poesía y colores. Un lugar donde florece la tierra y su gente, donde sus tradiciones detienen el tiempo. Dicen por ahí que todos los caminos te llevan a Roma, pero aquí se dice que todos los caminos del corazón te llevan a Guatemala.
My name is Camila Botran, and I'm the founder and CEO of Cinco Service Design Consulting. We help businesses design services that actually serve. This means services that are smooth, enjoyable, relevant, valuable, and efficient. Most service businesses today aim to compete only by product or quality. But today we live in an experience society and an experience economy. So people are seeking something else. They're not willing to pay any business for any product. They want something else. They want their whole experience to be better. So our aim is to give them a great experience from start to finish. My biggest motivation to apply for the Startup Avenue competition was being surrounded by so many entrepreneurs, the networking possibilities, listening to all the speakers, and all the workshops that have been designed surrounding all of the event.
Okay, guys, we're almost ready. Remember, we got 2 more speeches. And remember, Volcano for Good Guys, you want to help us, help people, help us with Volcano for Good, download the app, check it out. And if you're still thinking about getting an eco filter, you can help their eco filters in the back. They're for sale, and the revenue is going to go for Volcano for Good. So help us out and get your eco filter. Next up, Roberto Lara, Jose Raúl González Merlot, Luis Lara, and Rodrigo Tona. Moderated by Jama Bardi, CEO, Forum, Building the Business Future of the Central American for All. This is going to be in Spanish, so people, if you don't know Spanish, we have the translators in the back, so you can get it, please. Jama Bardi, founder of Volcano Summit, is a serial entrepreneur dedicated to fostering innovation and collaboration in Latin America through initiatives like Volcano Innovation Summit. Roberto Lara is the CEO of Castillo Hermanos, and a multi-Latin business group with diverse industry influence, holding degrees in Georgetown and Harvard, with a career spanning JP Morgan on his current leadership role. Raúl González is the CEO of Progreso and holds a master's in financial and economics from the University of Rochester and a bachelor's in business administration from Francisco Marroquín University. Luis Lara, CEO of Banco Industrial with over 30 years at the bank, holds key roles in Guatemala's banking and financial sectors, including president of the board of directors of the Asociación Bancaria de Guatemala and the member of the Junta Monetaria. Rodrigo Tona, an executive director of the Ternova, is the Salvadorian businessman and CEO known for his leadership in the multinational organization with diverse investments, sustainability focus, and a workforce of over 1,800 employees. Joined the CEO Forum with visionary leaders discussing the business future of Central America, addressing economic growth, innovation, regional challenges, gain insight into navigating the Central American business landscape, and promoting shared prosperity through collaboration and responsible leadership. Please give them a big round of applause.